Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're at the beginning of our study of the book of Ecclesiastes. And I want to give us some more introduction today and talk about the way the book is structured. So, I believe the book is straightforward. I don't think it's difficult to understand what's happening, although that doesn't mean that it's easy. It's certainly not easy. That's kind of the point. I want to just read the first 3 verses. The words of the speaker, the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanity, says the preacher, all is vanity. All is vanity. Vanity. What does a man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? I think right off the bat, in 3 short verses, we know what this book is about and what this book is about to do. Because this book asks a question. That question is based on an assumption. And then it's going to investigate that question. It's very scientific method, this book is. You know, thousands of years before we could identify anything like a scientific method. He really is using, experimentation to arrive at an answer to his question. He calls himself the son of David, king in Jerusalem. I said yesterday that I really do believe Solomon is the author of this work. That's not fashionable. Most people don't believe that anymore, but I do. I don't know who else fits the description that he makes of himself. He's certainly the most likely candidate based upon the description we have of the author in the book. He calls himself the preacher, the spokesperson, the one who's here to deliver the message, and even more literally, the one who has convened the crowd. And it very much is like he has called a press conference. Seriously, that's what this is. He's called a press conference because he's made a discovery. I'm here to speak to you. I'm the spokesman. And at the end, he says, when all is heard, I've made my case. I've presented all my evidence, the conclusions of my experimentation, and this is my conclusion. So it very much is like a press conference where someone has made a discovery and is releasing that discovery to the world. That's why he calls himself the preacher, the speaker, the spokesman, the one who has convened the crowd. Then he makes his assumption. Vanity of vanity, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Everything here in this existence is ultimately meaningless. It's like a breath. It's nothing. You know, and on the one hand, nothing is new. On the other hand, nothing lasts. And he's going to make that point over and over again. And he's going to, after verse 3, in beautiful poetry, between verses 4 and 11, he's going to elaborate on this assertion, this assumption. So everyone who is going to conduct an experiment has a hypothesis, you know, and then you go about trying to prove or disprove that hypothesis. Well, this is his hypothesis. And then the question that he asks in verse 3, what does a man gain, or what is beneficial? What is productive in all of our work that we work at, that we toil at under the sun? I think verse 3 is the most important verse to understanding the entire book, because this is the question that all of his experimentation is going to be investigating. And it's based upon his hypothesis. If everything is meaningless, temporary, empty, then what do we do while we're here? What profit can we find in the life of our toil that we live? And he limits the scope of his investigation to life on earth. Under the sun is a phrase he's going to repeat. Under the sun. He is not going to allow us to factor in eternity. He's not going to open the box. This is a closed box. It's human life on earth apart from eternity. And therefore, you and I, in this investigation, are not going to be allowed to say, well, that's true, but we're headed towards eternity. He's not going to let us do that. He has refused to allow eternity to factor in. In fact, he only mentions it once before the very last verse. He mentions eternity in the very last verse, and judgment and life beyond this existence, and reminds us that it's certain. He mentions it in chapter 3, in which he says God has placed eternity in our hearts, but he's kept it away from us. And he has, from Solomon. I mean, he just has. They don't know what we know from the New Testament. And so he is not in any way allowing us to factor in eternity. So he has convened the crowd. He's made a discovery. He tells us his hypothesis that everything is pointless. And then he's asked his question. If that's the case, then what profit can we find in life on earth? How do we spend our days productively? What good do we have in the toil that we have under the sun? And then, for most of the book, he's going to be experimenting, something that he describes in detail in chapter 2. He said, I had resources and I have wisdom, and I'm going to find out for myself. I'm going to try everything. I'm going to do everything. And because of the level of wisdom God has blessed me with, I'm going to be able to understand the meaning and the outcomes of my experiences. Therefore, when I finish my life and write this text and share my conclusions with you, you will know that they are hard-earned and that they are true. And so he's going to make us throughout the book basically stub our toe and bust our knuckles and sweat and groan with him throughout his work to find out the answer to his question. And of course, the answer to his question is fear God and keep his commandments. This applies to everybody because God will bring every act into judgment. That's the answer. This book only has to be 4 verses long, but it isn't, because we have to experience it with him for a variety of reasons. One is we have to do the hard work, or the knowledge isn't really earned knowledge, and we're not going to live by it. It's just going to be, a slogan that we put on a bumper sticker or hang on our wall. Second reason is he makes preliminary findings that lead up to that flesh out that final conclusion. He's going to find out that building relationships, enjoying your work for its own sake, sharing, doing your best for its own sake, all those things are part of fearing God and keeping his commandments, are ways that we do what God wants us to do and are productive for us to be doing. And so if we only had 4 verses, we'd miss out on all that too. And so anyway, that's why it's a necessary book. I know that people want to see this book as some negative take on life, as being pessimistic. This is a man who did a hard job that only he could do. Solomon, who had resources and a superior level of wisdom, a God-given level of wisdom. And he used his life as an experiment. And as we read Kings and Chronicles, we could say he wasted a lot of his life. And I think as we read Ecclesiastes, we'll see that he's wasted a lot of his life. But he comes to the right conclusion in the end. And he makes us earn it along with him. And that's what this book is about. We'll pick up with the text next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.